Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to That Christian Nerd, either YouTube account or Facebook account, since it is streaming to both platforms. Basically, I started a new apologetics and theology group that is centered on Facebook, or
Mhm.
was created on Facebook, and this is going to be a live stream dedicated to that group. So we're going to talk about apologetics, theology, theological diversity. Uh, Love in the midst of disagreements, all sorts of stuff. So, thank you so much for joining us for this. So, we are going. So, first, I want to offer a couple of announcements on my end as a creator. This month, there'll be a lot of gaming content coming up in June. I've been playing a lot of DC Universe Online and Multiverses, so we're going to be getting that out there. That's going to be really fun. My third video in the Biblical Slavery series is going to be coming out. We're going to talk about the nature and function of the Mosaic Law. I know I've been saying it's going to come out for months. It actually will in the month of June. So I got the feedback from a professor, so I can make the changes to the script and start publishing. Um, Otherwise, I would encourage you guys to check out the links that will be down in the description, including my link tree. I write articles on Medium about Christian philosophy, theology, movies, and TV shows. I have an article that's going to be released today reviewing the Spawn movie from 1997 um, that I watched recently, and there's going to be some other stuff. I'm collabing right now, actually, with my girlfriend to talk about the Batman film. So that was released in 2022, was it? So a lot of stuff going to be coming up this month. So definitely stay tuned for that. Again, check out all of our links. I'm sure these guys will have some content as well. I also am a ambassador for a skincare company called Verena. So I would encourage you guys to again check out my link tree, and the link to Verena shop will be there as well that you guys can check out if you want to support me financially in any way, um, and also reward yourself as well because everyone needs to take care of their skin. Um, but yeah, I think that's it for me on my end. So, uh, what kind of content do you guys have, and when will that be coming out?
Okay. You wanna go first?
I'll go first. I'll go first.
Go
Go.
for it.
So, the content that I do is I do apologetics against Jews and
Mm,
anybody who's an anti-missionary against Christianity. I was originally a Messianic Jew, and I converted to Oriental Orthodoxy. So my whole page is about proving that Oriental Orthodoxy or Orthodoxy in general is the completion and the continuation of Second Temple Judaism.
ah,
You go ahead,
yeah.
James.
Sorry, I wasn't expecting an Oriental. That's like a I don't know. It's just you don't see a lot, so that's pretty cool.
Right.
Anyways, but of course, my name is James. I run Followers of the Shepherd. We have an app and a website, of course. I really like to do a lot of just like baseline apologetics. My whole strategy is just kind of taking what higher up scholars do and kind of converting it to laymen because of course many scholars have that kind of like barrier between it, so I try to work in between those little grooves and bring scholarship down a little bit. I'm hoping to do a lot of videos on the Canaanite conquest and like is that moral. That's what I'm hoping to do in the coming weeks. Will that happen? Hopefully. I have a lot coming out this month, so hopefully that goes well. I also want to do a lot of stuff on the Angel of the Lord just because I find it so interesting. I already have a good amount of videos on it, but you never have too much. So that's for me. My theological persuasion is at the moment I'm looking into Lutheranism. I'm still kind of debating on it. But that's what I would probably consider myself at the moment. So
Gotcha,
Awesome.
gotcha. Yeah, so it's really cool that we were able to share our denominations and
yeah.
even be able to do a group like this. Because, like, throughout the church history, like, just think a couple hundred years ago, something like this would not have been possible.
Oh
Like, at all.
no, definitely
Like, I
not.
mean, so not just because of not having social media, but just because nobody liked each other. You know, um, it's really nice to see. So at least on my end, with in terms of denominations, I'm a Protestant. Where exactly I land in Protestantism, I'm not sure. I have, but I have Baptist, Pentecostal, and Seventh Day Adventist roots.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, that's what I would say. My family on my dad's side is largely Seventh Day Adventist.
Mhm.
I was saved and baptized in a Pentecostal church, and I later on became a part of the youth group of the Baptist church. So yeah, and then aside from that, I remember in eighth grade. This actually gave a good segue. So in eighth grade, I felt really challenged in my faith online by Roman Catholics. Uh, I don't know. At least on my end, in
Mhm.
my Eastern Orthodoxy, any kind of Orthodoxy just doesn't have a strong online presence. So like
Yeah,
I
that's
ran in,
too.
yeah. So I ran into Roman Catholics before I even knew what Orthodoxy was.
Yeah, yeah.
No shade, no shade, but I'm just
Mhm.
saying. Um, so I was challenged on that end. I had a Jehovah's Witness challenge me. She was actually the mother of one of my friends, so we were able to have that dialogue. And other things were happening too, where it's like, okay, I need to learn about this. I need to become a real student of the faith, intellectually at least. And so
Yeah.
that kind of started my apologetics and theology journey because
Mhm.
it was um, trying to figure out what I believe, especially knowing these already denominational divides.
Mhm.
Excuse me. Especially being called to be a pastor, I wanted to know what I believed and why. So that really started my journey there. So, uh, what about you guys? What started your interest in really diving deep into theology and apologetics?
My thing was, so when I was a Messianic, I would see
Mhm.
a lot of my people, the Jews, talk
Mhm.
about, like you were saying, the angel of the Lord, right?
Mhm.
And when it came to Judaism, I was
Mhm.
like, wait a minute, let's hold up, because my father and my mother studied these type of things like Kabbalism and
Mhm.
like Jewish mysticism as Messianics. So I
Mhm.
asked them, what sources can I use? And they brought me this one book, and it's right here. And this started my apologetic journey. It's How Can the Three Be One?
Mhm.
And it comes from a Jewish mystical perspective.
Mhm.
And I started to be like, okay, so the angel of the Lord is not just a regular angel. He is
Mhm.
uncreated. He's the image of God. What they call in Judaism the emanation.
Mhm.
So I started to combat Judaism because modern Judaism isn't a perfect reflection of Judaism of the first century, because Judaism in the first century believed in a multiple hypostases. So that really started my apologetic journey, is proving the divinity of Jesus and proving the Trinity and stuff like that.
Mhm. Well, mine's not as, I don't know. So I guess I started out just kind of like delving in. Like I didn't really have like much of a reason. I saw some other Christian TikTokers and I kind of wanted to do the same. And about that time I was experiencing a lot of like kind of pushback because I had a lot of friends that were pagans and people pretty much everywhere. Like there was just like a bunch of different little beliefs that I was friends with at the time. And they would kind of
Uh-huh.
like give me a few challenges. I would respond, and that's kind of what really kind of started amplifying it over time. So that's probably about that kind of thing. Um, yeah.
Gotcha. No, that's really cool. I definitely remember having those conversations with people in high school about the faith and things like that. So it's definitely a really good time and something I think high school needs right now. You know,
Uh-huh.
Christians in the public high school sphere who can share the gospel with people and share that hope with the next generation.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, with that said, turning to apologetics for a moment, what is your favorite apologetic? It can be against any group in your defense of Christianity, but what is your favorite apologetic? And I can, since I'm asking the question, I can go first. I think one of my favorite defenses of the Christian faith is um, I really like the moral argument. I think it hits people differently because
Mhm,
it is an argument that people can take personally.
mhm,
Um, Hopefully, not in such a way as they get angry, right, with the argument or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's obviously not the intent, and of
mhm,
course, people know morality,
mhm,
but rather that uh, God is sort of the basis by which we can have um, objective moral systems. Um, and I do think that speaks to people because people go through really horrible things, and knowing and I so I think arguing that your objectivity should be based in God
mhm,
uh, is uh, that can speak to people at least. Um, I think second to that is the cosmological argument.
Hmm.
I the I the cosmological argument and then the fine tuning argument. I think these two,
Oh yeah.
if you're interested in philosophy and science, I think
Hmm.
these two can really speak to those sorts of people. And there are a lot of atheists too, particularly with the fine tuning argument, who have said, "I'm unconvinced, but this is a
Mhm.
good argument." So yeah. So what about you guys?
You could go first, James, if you want.
Mhm.
Probably my favorite argument. Well, I guess it's kind of like a mix between two. I really like fine tuning. That's probably one of my favorite, if not the second. It's kind of like one of those two. It kind of depends on my day. I really like the
Mhm.
resurrection argument as well. Just things pertaining to that. I like to just like showing that the apostles were likely accurate. They were likely being honest with what they were saying. The gospels are likely accurate. Really like those kind of arguments too, just because it's a giant field. I'd like to not stick to just one little tiny thing. But when it comes to the resurrection argument, for example, it's very has a lot of different little parts that you can go on. But then fine tuning is of course very interesting as well because it just has like a lot of sciencey things to it, and I really like the that like aspect of it. So that's one of my favorites. For like least sort of like maybe misunderstood. Yeah. Did I miss something? I feel like I missed something.
No, that was good. It was just what your favorite apologetic arguments are. So uh, I think he froze.
Oh.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh,
Oh
there
no.
you go. Okay,
Yeah,
you're
there.
good now. Yeah, you're
Okay.
good. But yeah, what about you, Serrano?
My favorite argument is the what it's the design argument,
Mhm,
saying that if there is a design, there is a designer. I think that's a very good argument, and like a really good argument for me, for Christianity, is the historical narrative. We have historians recording what the apostles did, like Josephus. Uh, we also have, you know, the church fathers talking about the teachings of the apostles, and stuff like that. So I feel like those are really good arguments because you can't just be like, oh, anybody can interpret Jesus. Well, no, not anybody can interpret Jesus because the first century believers had already a foundation of what they believed in and a foundation of what they saw. So I believe those two are the best arguments for me.
mhm,
Gotcha. And so, on the flip side of that, then, what do you guys consider the most powerful argument against Christianity? In my view, I think uh, it's tied between the sort of evil God critique um,
mhm,
and the uh, um, the evil God critique and evil Bible critique, you could call it,
yeah.
where the unbeliever tries to argue that the Bible has um, very immoral teachings in it, either as teachings or that God commanded to a particular thing or something like that, like the Canaanite conquest, right? Like biblical slavery. Um, I think those are very powerful arguments because they are a internal. Um, they're the kind of critique that like would implode Christendom because it can't Christendom can't function unless God is good,
Mhm.
and Christianity can't function unless God's teachings are good. So you have to really dive into the Bible, really dive into the historical context, really dive into hermeneutics and stuff to be able to have an understanding of what is going on in those situations and why they're probably not as bad as some people want it to be. Although it is, although some things are bad, and I think there's some reasons behind those sorts of things. Uh, so James froze again, which is lovely. Hey Stefan, how are you
Thanks,
doing?
Stefan.
Good, Steven. Yep.
Okay, Steven, I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem.
So we were just talking about our what we thought were the most powerful arguments against Christianity in terms of apologetics and stuff like that. But you can go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us who you are, that sort of thing. What denomination or background you have, that sort of thing.
Sure. My name's Steven. I was raised Catholic, but I'm non-denominational now. Um, Married, been going to the same church for a really long time. So,
Gotcha. What kind of content do you do online, if anything?
I'm actually a Christian financial planner. I don't really do a lot of content necessarily.
Gotcha. I see. Okay. No, yeah, actually, I did go through a little bit of your profile, and I did think it was really interesting. I know that's something I could have used last year, right? So it's a very practical thing for people. No, that's really cool. So I guess what got you interested in theology and apologetics?
I've always been interested in it. I guess for me, it was finding my faith, and for me, the biggest argument was actually the Old Testament and how it connects to Jesus. And once I realized that, I became a believer. So I
Mhm.
believe, yeah.
Gotcha. No, that's really cool. Yeah, I remember reading through the book of Jude and
Mhm.
just seeing that and reading that verse, right, where Jude seems to indicate that Jesus was involved in the Exodus and
Mhm.
going, "Oh wow." uh in like if you're a non-believer, you could say, well, that's his interpretation. He's probably wrong. But if you're a believer, you read that and go, wow, that's a strong connection. Like this is the same God
Mhm.
across thousands of years. So yeah, really, really interesting stuff there. And then also, real quick, do you have a favorite apologetics argument? It can be an argument against atheists, Jehovah's Witnesses, doesn't matter who the group is. And then, what would you say is the most powerful argument against Christianity?
Oh wow. Um, I guess I don't know my favorite apologetic. The most powerful against. I don't know. I think there's not a lot of strong argument. I guess I don't really know. Sorry, guys. Like,
Oh,
I guess if I was like in a situation where people were asking me questions, like I'd be
mhm.
fine, like just going through all the apologetics. But like, I guess I just don't. Yeah, it's been a while since like when I was really deep in it for a while, but now it's been a few years. So after getting married and doing that kind of stuff. So.
Oh, gotcha. No, that's fair. You definitely have your on and off seasons with certain things. So no, that's totally fair. Um, did everyone get a chance to say what their favorite or yeah, what their favorite deal apologetic argument was, but also the most powerful argument against Christianity in your view?
I didn't get to say anything.
Okay, go ahead.
I think the biggest argument that people can make against Christianity at the moment, because we don't have many like historians talking about it or anything like that, is the pharisaical knowledge of Paul. Like what we really have is just Paul saying that I was at the feet of Rabbi Gamaliel, but we don't have any outside sources to back that up unless you can go to like the Pirkei Avot, which brings up similar teachings with Paul. You can use that as an argument, but overall, I think the biggest argument against Christianity right now at the moment is probably the statements of Paul and his either his true apostolicness or his rabbinical side of being a Pharisee.
Gotcha. That's interesting. I have dived into Paul a little bit,
Mhm.
and one of the things I find really interesting about Paul is that he's very much a Hellenistic Jew, like in his context. Like
Yeah,
he the amount of Greek knowledge
Mhm.
that he has, even just the virtue and vice listings that he does, where he says, "Hey, here's the fruit of the spirit, here's the fruit of the flesh," like these sort of virtues and vices. That's a very
it's very what I did a whole study on Paul's conversion and all of
Mhm.
that and his Jewish teaching to the church. It seems to me when it comes to Paul that Paul has a very Jewish mystical idea of even the Torah or God Himself, where he's talking about we have one God and one Lord.
Mhm.
That kind of alludes to the two powers of heaven.
Mhm.
Um, Type of theology, or when he talks about him seeing Christ, most Orthodox Christian scholars say that he didn't see Christ as a singular person, but he saw Christ in the throne room, what they call in ancient Judaism, Mirkaba, which is the chariot of Ezekiel, what Ezekiel saw, the throne room of God. So I think Paul has very Hellenistic ideas, and I also think he has very Jewish mystical ideas. Because let's be frank, the early Christians were called, I believe they were called Nazarim, they were called the Way, and eventually their theology, based on what I've studied, is that they have very Essenic sectarian Judaism, which would include Hellenistic and the Essenes and Jewish mysticism and philosophy. And I think that's where Paul gets the whole idea of like quoting Greek philosophers because he was surrounded by different groups of Judaism.
yeah, yeah, especially given his context. So
Yeah,
it it definitely feels like if Paul is fits anywhere, he fits in the first century
yeah,
kind
Mhm.
he
of
does
thing.
as a first century Jew.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. So with that said, what are some of the theological hot takes you guys might have? Is this stuff where like you gonna say it and it's like, hey, I believe this, but I don't know how well this is gonna go over with other people. I have two real quick. Again, we're allowed to disagree if we do, but I do have a time limit, so
Right.
we won't dive super deep into all of this. I'm sure we all could. Uh, I lately have been defending the theistic evolutionist position. I believe all of the Bible to be true, and I think it's compatible with the evolutionary perspective. So I've been defending that lately, and I am also an annihilationist. So I'm going to argue that hell is a place where people will be uh, annihilated or cease to exist as opposed to, say, universalism, which is going to say that everyone is saved in the end, or eternal conscious torment, which is going to say that, you know, the unbeliever is going to go to hell and eternally suffer there and never get out, that sort of thing. Uh,
Mhm.
so with that said, whoever wants to go next can take their
Oh,
theological.
I
you're gonna
actually had a
really
question, if that's okay.
uh,
So,
Yeah.
theistic evolution, how does that work? Is it like a guided process, or what is theistic evolution? I guess.
Um, so theistic evolution, or I more prefer the term evolutionary creationism, is going to propose that God used the evolutionary process to create. How all of that works and how Genesis is interpreted is disagreed upon within um, ECs, evolutionary creationists. Um, but I do think having um, I think a correct understanding of Genesis will allow for a uh, evolutionary position. So
I would actually agree with that.
yeah. So what are you guys' hot takes? Whoever can
My
go first.
theological intake are two intakes like yours, but
Mhm.
mine is argumentation of the importance of the sacraments, like the Eucharist. I believe that, and I have a study that's coming up on my YouTube channel, and I'll send it to you guys in a group chat. But that essentially the sacraments leads to your relationship with God, because the whole thing with the fall of Adam and Eve is that we've lost communion with God, and we need to reconnect with that communion. And that can only be found, in my opinion, with the commandments of Jesus Christ, which would be the sacraments. Um, Another thing I make a great argumentation of is the intercession of the saints. A lot of people have this tendency to think that when you see those icons back there, and I'm making the sign of the cross and I'm bowing down to them, that means I'm a idolater, and that's not. I don't think that's the proper Hebraic understanding of idolatry um, in its first century Jewish context. So I argue about the importance of the sacraments and intercession of the saints.
Mm.
Gotcha. Real quick, James, can you hear us? Are you
I can hear you, but whenever I turn my camera on, it like gets mad at me. So
good? Oh, sad
Hey,
panda.
hey,
Yeah, he's jeez,
you've
he's
been
been
in and
having a
out of
rough day.
here.
Well, Steven, was it?
Yep.
Okay, you can go ahead and tell us your hot takes.
I definitely find like the evolution and theology and how they overlap fascinating. Kind of why I asked some questions, and I actually think that foundation can be used. Or the issue with evolution is I think it can kind of replace God in a way. Like the mechanism. If you just believe everything's just randomness and there's just large numbers, and the more number, because then the universe is supposedly infinite, then of course life would exist, kind of thing. So I believe in macroevolution, but not necessarily microevolution. What I mean by that is I believe that like animals and things adapt, but I kind of hold on to the idea that there are limitations to what in terms of what God put in terms of like I don't think like a dolphin's necessarily going to turn into a cat kind of thing, or well, I guess a better example is into an orange, that kind of thing. So
And real quick, just a point of clarification, you mean microevolution
Mhm.
is the animals adapting slowly over time. So if I, whereas macroevolution is going to be the one that most young Earth creationists would disagree with. Because you were flipped the two. You said macroevolution was the one that you accepted.
yeah, I guess
Yeah,
yeah, the micro
yeah,
adaptations. Yep.
yeah. Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. Um, So, with that said, as you guys can see here, James is over here struggling. But, but
Uh,
yeah, we
Unfortunate.
we we represent a diversity of theological opinions and thought. I remember just before the live, I was talking with Serrano about how he was a Oriental Orthodox and sort of his move there. But in this group, we hold the idea that um, Catholics, Protestants, and Orthodox Christians are true Christian churches.
Mhm.
Uh, at
Yeah.
least I came to this position personally when, through a couple different reasons, I figured, well, if Protestantism was the only true church, then what was then I think Christ that means Christ essentially failed to hold his church for um, 1,000 plus years, which seems really problematic to me. Um,
Mhm.
Not that people don't have free will and can't go mess up and go their own way, but to say that the we've lost the church at all, to me seems like a broken uh, seems to break the promise that Jesus gives us in Matthew 28.
Yeah, yeah, and I would
Um,
even say, Izzy, like when we Googled the like half of the population who are Christians outside of America, they're either Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, or Oriental. So to
yeah,
be like, oh, my Western idea of Christianity is the only Christianity, I feel like is condemning a lot of people.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. And then the historical thing was a big issue for me, and then the second thing was just that this isn't how early Protestants treated things.
right.
At least not how all early Protestants treated things. So obviously, Martin Luther and John Calvin have some very strong words, you might say, against the Roman Catholic Church, but they thought the Roman Catholic Church was a true church. Um,
Yeah.
and in terms of orthodoxy, there was conversation between Protestants and Orthodox, and the Protestant side said, "We believe you guys are Christians. If we could do this, we would love to become one church." And so, united, of course, on Christ and allowing for diversity. So,
Yeah.
uh, those two things for me, as well as I looked into the scriptures and found I'm not sure how big the disagreements are in terms of the gospel that would somehow disqualify them. Like I remember, I listened to the conversation between Dr. Jordan Cooper and um, uh, not Trent Horn. Who's the other guy? Like long beard, Catholic guy.
Oh, you're talking about Jimmy?
Yes, Jimmy Aiken. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, wait,
Um,
what's like Jimmy?
yeah. So I listened to their dialogue on justification. Like the topic was justification, and there were people 2 hours into the conversation who were typing in the chat, "What do you guys disagree about?" And that was like, oh my goodness, like the Lutherans and it's hard to delineate the difference between the Lutheran and the Catholic on justification. I mean, they did do it, right? But the disagreement to me was, I think, important, but not something that fundamentally changes the gospel. So, if we can allow, that Lutherans are saved Christians in Protestantism, then due to their understanding of the gospel, then I think we could allow for the Catholic and then the Orthodox side of things too. I remember reading like I don't remember what understanding of Orthodoxy it was, but I read an Orthodox website that was talking about salvation, and I got done and I was like, this is just what I believe.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
even use some of
yeah.
the same terminology too. So yeah, so that was those things were really big for me. So what about you, Serrano? What kind of led you to the conclusion that we're all, I guess, Christian churches?
What led me to the conclusion was originally when I was part of the Anglican Church, right? The biggest thing was stating that everybody's a Christian and that there's diverse groups that are unified because the early church was like that. You really think St. Paul and uh, Peter were in agreement with each other on issues? Obviously, Peter had a belief where people uh, kept the Torah and all of that, and then Paul's like, "Well, I don't think Gentiles don't need to keep that." So there obviously was a disagreement in the church about certain subjects. But what led me to like believing that all Christians are Christians is because of the Jerusalem Council. I see Pharisaical Christians in the council talking with regular Christians about the subject of restricted meat, the subject of that. Some of them disagreed, some of them agreed. So I feel like to say to be like, oh, my church is the only true church. I feel like it's very, I think it can come off a little bit narcissistic and cult like. So, and what we also have to understand is a lot of the Roman Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox who quote that, I think it's Ignatius of Antioch, where he says that outside the Catholic Church there is no salvation. You have to understand Christianity was a small population back then. Christianity wasn't like millions of people that we see today. So I feel like to say that this individual is not saved because he's a Roman Catholic, or this individual is not saved because he's a Lutheran or Anglican or Presbyterian, I feel like is forgetting the whole point of what Paul gets at, that we're one mind, one body,
Mm.
with multiple parts and multiple functions. So that's what led me to it, is that when it comes to the body of Christ, we're supposed to be unified, not separate.
Yeah, and I would agree there.
Mm.
James, if you can hear us and we can hear
Yeah.
you, would you like to try to answer this?
Yeah, I can hear you guys, but I don't exactly know the discussion because I got kicked off a few times. So can you re-explain what the topic is here?
Yeah, definitely. So we were saying, how did you come to the conclusion
Mhm.
that Catholics, Orthodox, and Protestants are part of the true church?
Yeah. Honestly, I think it just comes down to like understanding. Like I feel like we all had that time in when we're growing where we thought that, for example, that Catholics are Mary worshippers. I mean, at least for me, like I feel like I had that. I really thought that. I genuinely thought that. But when I actually started to read Catholic documents, when I started to actually discuss with Catholics, I was like, oh, so that's not, I misunderstood that. So I think
Yeah,
once we understand that we all have the same God, we all have the same, you know, commonalities here. I think that's what really was like, okay, we can be ecumenical in that sense. But
Gotcha. And what about you, Stefan? Or Stephen? I'm so sorry.
Oh no, no,
I
you're good.
I keep I because every time I see your name, I think about the character from Vampire Diaries, and his name was Stefan. So I just
Oh,
yeah,
gotcha.
forgive my weirdness.
that's funny.
So my personal belief is that all there can be Christians in all denominations, but I think certain denominations um, can their practices can mislead and have a be farther away from an actual relationship with Christ, and then put too much focus on, for instance, sacraments or saints and things like that. But that's just my opinion. And obviously, I grew up Catholic, and I have family members that are still Catholic, and my grandparents died Catholic, and my grandfather was very much of very devout Christian. But at the same time, I know Catholics that I would not necessarily, I don't know, but I wouldn't necessarily from the fruit consider them like authentic or like have a real relationship with Christ.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that would actually be important to note too on this topic is
Hmm.
that like we all have people where you know we might look at them in the pew and either misjudge them as not Christian when they actually are,
Hmm.
or they might not be Christian, right? And that goes for uh, and that goes for any church. Like
Yeah,
I know that it's definitely a stereotype, at least in the Black church community, to have Black people who are partying and with women right on Friday and Saturday, and then hung over in church on Sunday, right? So it certainly is important to remember too that doctrine influences your life, obvious your life and relationship with Christ, right? But that your relationship with Christ
Hmm.
is you could say what saves you,
Hmm.
right? And then
yeah,
um, certainly how that is expressed is going to be diverse among the church, but everyone is going to have. I would assume at least that every church likely probably has people that we might think are saved, but in
Hmm.
fact are not in their heart, right? Kind of like the Pharisees, right? Like, if anyone's saved, it's the Pharisees. And then Jesus is like, well,
Well,
well, well,
well,
yeah.
actually,
yeah. So I think a similar thing can happen too. Um, so as we've discussed here, very diverse theologically and in terms of apologetics. Uh, relating those two together, how has your theology influenced your apologetics? I would say for me, as an example, being a theistic evolutionist is kind of fun because I get non-believers who are like, you don't need God for evolution.
Mhm,
And I'm like, okay, well, now I need to defend the theist part of theistic evolution.
mhm,
And then, of course, we have Christians who are concerned about how that jives with the text.
mhm,
And so I'm like, okay, well, now I have to justify um, my hermeneutic and the evolution side of theistic evolution. So I would say that my apologetic has changed a little bit because I'm not just,
mhm,
I kind of have to defend my position on both sides
mhm,
and encourage Christians to be at least more open. Like,
mhm.
and there are a lot of good young Earth creationists and good books
Yeah.
on being open about that sort of thing. And then also argue that um, evolutionary creationism is a better explanation for
Mhm,
what we see than evolution on its face.
mhm.
So that said, what about you guys? How has your theology and beliefs affected your defense of the faith?
Mm,
I feel like mine has changed in the sense of, because you know me, I was very Torah observant and still kind of am. I feel like because I was heavy Torah observant in my early walk, now that I know so much about the Old Testament, I can just show people like, hey, these are the connections of the Old Testament.
mhm,
Like most of the stuff that I quote is Old Testament stuff. It's
mhm,
rare that I quote any New Testament stuff unless I'm trying to give like a comparison, like with the Psalms and the prophecies of Jesus. So I
mhm,
feel like where I have changed is my apologetics with Jews. And I used to just be like showing them the sages, showing them the rabbis, showing them this. But now I show, hey, there's a common ground here of tradition, especially with the sacraments and stuff like that. And it's actually helped me with my apologetic style and lead a lot of Jews into Jesus. Like I just had a Jew hit me up this morning saying, "Hey, I'm really interested in Oriental Orthodoxy. I'm thinking of converting," and he's an Orthodox Jew.
mhm,
So I feel like my apologetic style has changed from like very militant and very aggressive to, hey, this is what I know, and I'm here to show you and provide you evidence, and you can take it or leave it.
mhm.
So I've changed a lot in that sense. I used to be very gun ho, what they call the stage.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. No one likes a cage stage, Christian.
Yeah, no one likes the cage stage. So my apologetic style has changed over the years.
Mhm.
Whoever wants to go next can go.
I guess I'll jump in. I guess one kind of thing is like I'm very like ecumenical nowadays. Like I don't like want to like I guess really attack other Christians, so I try to just focus on non-Christians. So I think that might have kind of influenced like the things I like to create or the things I like to talk about a lot of the time. So maybe that kind of answers the question. Can't really think of anything else to really add.
Gotcha.
Mhm,
Yeah.
And what about you?
So, in my walk early on, I had, especially as I was figuring things out for myself, I was similar situation where I'd have very heated debates about
mhm,
evolution and all these other concepts about salvation. But now that I'm kind of different, I'm at a different stage in my walk, kind of older, I kind of follow the KISS, keep it simple
mhm.
model, follow, just point people to resources because I've read that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it seems like a commonality is that we've all kind of chilled.
Yeah.
um, and I could definitely say the same. I know that um, obviously, I when I got very into this,
Mhm.
I the second conversation I had with the Jehovah's Witness, I initiated, and other things I would like to create those opportunities because I was learning so much. I loved what I was learning, and obviously wanted to share that with other people. And I found other people's thoughts to be um, valuable. Um, but yeah, I do think it is important, right, that um, the passage in Peter that is often cited to in support of apologetics is, defend the faith, or sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, always be ready to give a defense for the hope that's within you. Yeah, with gentleness and respect, right? And I think chilling out allows us to better in, do the gentle and respect part of it.
Yeah, for sure. I
And I
agree.
think a big part for me that allowed me to relax was my job is just to plant the seed. It's ultimately God that saves. So that was a big revelation for me. So
Yeah, yeah. I find I know one of the things that some atheists have critiqued was that when they were
Mhm.
a Christian, they felt like they had to talk about it all the time
Mhm.
uh, because they needed to save people or help save people,
Mhm.
and obviously it's a good thing to help save people. We can chill knowing that even prayer can be a
Mhm.
salvific act, right? First Timothy 2, right? Pray for the salvation of kings and
Mhm.
many. Why? Because God desires to save all. So uh, even just prayer can be simple. You don't even have to go out and talk to
Mhm.
someone. And I think that can be um, really important. Uh, with that said, in relation to people's salvation and stuff like that, what some people are going to say, yeah, apologetics seems cool. Okay, y'all are nerds. But this doesn't have any evangelistic value. You need to be preaching the gospel, not,
Mhm.
maybe not necessarily um, doing these other things. Or there seems to be, among some Christians at least, this uh, a similar notion that apologetics really isn't a
Mhm.
part of their faith. And I guess to speak to that crowd, what evangelistic value can, I guess, both theology and apologetics have for
Mhm.
people? Whoever wants to go can go.
I feel like I was just saying earlier is that the fact that I'm on multiple discords talking to Jews and they're combating me, they're arguing with me about
Mhm.
who Jesus Christ is and like the whole 9 yard. I've met 3 Jews already that
Mhm.
have converted to my church because I've
Mhm.
had a conversation with them in kind of a debating form, like giving resources and stuff. So I feel like it is a salvific act for some individuals.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not going to say that it's like the person who says, oh, what if someone dies and believes on the cross, but they were never baptized? Well, that's not a regular situation, that's
Mhm.
irregular. So I feel like the regular situation is that when we're discussing with individuals, I feel like giving the sources and giving the knowledge towards people is going to make them realize, oh, this makes sense. This isn't something that man just made out of nowhere. This is
Mhm.
something that is tangible and understandable. So I feel like apologetics does work for certain individuals, and it might not work for other individuals, but overall, it works.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Yeah, just to kind of like jump on that, I do think that apologetics can be very useful because it gives people that idea of just like thinking about it, if nothing else. Because it just like when you like hear a really good argument, for example, at least for me, I like to think about it, like just kind of just like sits in my brain for a little bit. So I think even that thought can correlate to someone finding Christ or something like that. I think that a lot of people were raised in the church, but they had a very weak faith and they'll leave it because they don't really think that it has any, like, there's no reason to be Christian. But I think that apologetics kind of can, bring people a little bit back in. So it's, of course, like he was saying, it's not going to help everyone because some people just don't really care about truth. They just kind of want to do what they want to do. But I think that for people that truly want truth, I think that it can be very helpful and a very useful tool. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I personally think everyone should have some basic understanding of
mm-hmm.
apologetics because it's not blind faith, right? It's faith. We're called by faith, but not necessarily blind faith. And
Mm-hmm.
also, if you're not really interested in the why, like, are you really, is this really a true, like, a belief? Do you really have any, or is this just kind of a cultural phenomena you were raised in? I'm not saying that you couldn't have that, the Holy Spirit just, just called you and that was that. But like at the same time, if you don't have any interest in seeing if this is truth for you, may perhaps can be a little dangerous. Because
Mm-hmm.
because your faith might be weaker, right? Like what happens if a trial comes along and you're like, oh, this this doesn't work, or how, like especially with what's that called, prosperity gospel. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not rich, so this is just definitely not for me, kind of thing. Like, oh, this is a bunch of hogwash.
Yeah, yeah. I think too. Also, apologetics can definitely have some evangelistic value, but so can just being a good friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, and I think Paul says as much, right? I believe it's in the First Thessalonians where he says, we didn't just share truth; we shared our lives
Mm-hmm.
with you, right? Like we became your friends, and so I think um, I think apologetics can be really important, but I think having that friendship there uh, changes things as well. So, do you guys have a friendship with someone where you kind of did apologetics, um, but there was a difference there between, say, doing it with that friend that you care so much about, and that you guys can just share life together,
Mm-hmm.
uh, versus maybe doing it in the online space or talking with
Mm-hmm.
someone you don't know too well.
Yeah.
For me, there was definitely that difference. I remember in eighth grade, again, as my faith is being challenged, I become friends with a theistic Satanist, and I don't mean like a chill theistic Satanist. I mean like because as weird as it might sound, such a thing exists.
Mm-hmm.
I mean like the radical one. Like
Mm-hmm.
she thought that um uh she would be she would give her allegiance to Satan and fight Christians in the end times. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is that was how
Oh,
radical she
wow.
was. So somehow we became friends, and and her challenges and her struggles definitely made me express
Mm-hmm.
apologetics a bit differently to her than other people. So,
Mm-hmm.
what about you guys?
For me, I have a group of friends that are live very not very good lifestyles. I mean, uh, I'm talking about like they pop pills and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So when I approach them with stuff, I feel like that set of arena is set up differently because there's actual intimacy of friendship between
Mm-hmm.
you and the person talking. So I feel like it's different in that sense. So I try to come more gentler instead of being objective all the time,
Mm-hmm.
trying to understand their situation, what they're going through. Because some of my friends, you know, don't have parents. Their parents are dead, or some of my friends don't have anybody. So to them, when I'm talking about God, they feel like it's naiveness. It can't be true because
Mm-hmm.
of the things that they're going through. So I try to make them understand, like through the book of Job, and like stuff like that. So I try to grab scripture and fit it in their life stories that it's hard for
Mm-hmm.
them, and it works sometimes with some of my friends, and some of my friends completely shut me off. And I feel like when it comes to friends and family that you talk to on a daily basis compared
Hmm.
to people that you're debating online, I
Hmm.
feel like they're two different arenas because you have an emotional connection with these people.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Hmm.
I definitely switch up my voice pattern and switch up how I talk to, like, let's
Hmm.
say my mom, or let's say my sisters, compared to someone who I disagree with online.
Hmm.
So I would agree with that in a sense.
Yeah, I would definitely say that getting to know someone makes apologetics much easier because they give you the sense of um, what's how do I want to word this? Like they like a lot of times they won't be as like combative, because you'll have that connection. So it normally goes a lot smoother. Um, so that's always nice to have. Um, I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, I've heard,
I would also say, James, you
yeah.
know, there's this church father that's part of my group of church fathers, which
Hmm.
his name is Syriac.
Hmm.
No, Isaac the Syriac, and he says that he essentially says that do not dispute over the truth with someone who does not know the truth,
Hmm.
but from the person who is eager to know the truth. Do not withhold the words from him. So we
Hmm.
have to understand that there's going to be individuals in our lives who aren't eager, who aren't willing to listen to us and have a conversation with us. But the
Hmm.
ones who are eager, we better give them the words of the
Yeah.
gospel
Definitely.
because that
Hmm.
it's really like that. And that's why I say, like, I have a rule on my podcast that I do not debate atheists who are
Hmm.
already made up their mind about what they believe. You already made
Hmm.
up your mind in that point. Like you're not willing to have a conversation. You're not
Hmm.
willing to have an eagerness for the truth. So therefore, I don't think I should be having a conversation with you. I'm just falling on empty words, and one is going out the other ear to the another. So
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely emotions first, and then address the logic,
Hmm.
um, and also lots of question. I that's my approach. Is I ask lots of questions because I want to see where they're at, and then like kind of think of it like a I guess like a doctor. You can't prescribe something like you can't prescribe a verse if you don't know where they're at spiritually.
Hmm.
yeah,
No, that's a good analogy. I think that's really important. Yeah, yeah. So friendship is definitely can definitely influence our apologetics and our theology, but so can our like specific focuses too. Um, so I guess this question will kind of depend on your context. So, um, what challenges do you face particular to what you do with regards to the Christian faith? So, like, what I mean by this is like, uh, if you were a pastor, let's say, how would being in that context affect things? Um, or let's say, like in the case of Stephen, you're a Christian financial planner. How often do you come across prosperity gospel, right? And how many times you got to tell people that's not how this works? Uh, uh, so, particular to your context of doing things, what challenges do you face?
Given like where I'm at, I probably if I was like in California or Florida, I'm in Michigan by the way.
Hmm.
It might be a little different, but I actually run against the opposite. I run against poverty. Uh, gospel. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but like pretty much like it's good to be poor, which is not necessarily what God was saying, right? Like it's good to. Anyways, I'm not going to go on all that, but essentially, it's limiting the ability for the church to if people need resources to build the church, right? Like it's not necessarily evil to have, the love of money is evil, not
Hmm.
money itself. And if you don't have resources to at least, I mean, to give a little bit, take care of yourself and then give a little bit, then you can't really build up the church. So I run into that a lot where people think it's evil to like have a retirement account even. Like why would I need that kind of excess? I'm like, because there's going to be a point where you can no longer work physically, and like it's not fair to your family to
Mm,
expect them to take care of you when you had the when you, I mean, there's a difference between being negligent and just not making good decisions, and oh, I came on hard times, I got cancer and I was
Mhm.
completely wiped out. Now, I expect, I'm hoping my family out of love will take care of me. But just making poor decisions like, oh, I don't believe in having a retirement account is completely different. In my view, I don't necessarily.
Mhm.
Maybe some people would disagree, but
I
Mhm.
say that my biggest is there's two, right? My biggest thing is we have a lot of, and I see this throughout TikTok too. We have a lot of people who come from older generations treating what the younger generation going through as like insignificant.
Mhm.
And I deal with people like that all the time. Like I saw a guy trying to expose this one kid, and he's a new believer, and this kid is um, he has a smoking problem, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm not talking about cigarettes, I'm talking about marijuana. And this kid was like, this guy was like, oh, if you continue to do that, you're going to hell, and like that whole charade of things, the devil's lettuce, and like all of that. I feel like even though I agree that people shouldn't be abusing substance, I feel like that's a form of drunkenness.
Mhm.
I feel like how the older generation is approaching certain things, I think, is sinful in itself,
Mhm.
uh, like struggles and stuff like that. And then they wonder why people are pushing themselves away from the church.
Mhm.
Um, so I deal with that a lot. That's like the biggest struggle I have with people is because, I'm a person who struggles with
Mhm.
substance and stuff like that. So I feel like um, people should start having more compassion for individuals' struggles instead
Mhm.
of pointing the finger. I mean, they clearly haven't read Romans 14. Uh, so I feel like my other struggle is dealing with the anti-missionary Jewish people all the time. Like they're always in my DM, harassing me, bothering me. It makes me sometimes be like, oh my gosh, do I even want to be on YouTube anymore? Like,
Mhm.
so I deal with that a lot. So I feel like those are personally me, my biggest struggles is when people are derailing people who struggle with substance, and another person who uh, attacking me because I said Jesus is the fulfillment of Judaism. you
Mhm.
know, so those are my personal struggles.
Yeah. Hmm. Um, I don't really have any too major personal struggles when it comes to it. I mean, I am, of course, a little younger, so that can
Yeah.
be a bit of a pain because not, people older normally don't want to have those kind of discussions. I've realized, or don't really take what I'm saying, like they take it for granted, I suppose. So I think that's kind of a thing I've experienced a lot of the time.
Mhm.
Um, but nothing really too crazy.
yeah, yeah. I was actually going to ask Ichi, Ichi about those, about your particular context, and yeah, I do find it uh, interesting that um, you have people, like, it seems Christians in general want people to learn more about the Bible and God and things like that, but
Mhm.
a lot of, for example, evangelicals or deconstructionists, like, part of the problem was that they were asking questions. And
Mhm.
it's similar to you, James. They felt like maybe they weren't listened to by older people,
Mhm.
or sometimes they were given really bad answers. To be fair, uh, and those things can certainly be problematic. Which obviously connects to what um, Serrano said, that uh, the older people should think about how to engage with younger people. Um,
Yeah, especially that okay, so like for me, for example, I live in a state where marijuana is medicalized and it's legal to
Mhm.
have. So I feel like, my priest is talking recently. My priest was talking about in the catechism class smoking as a sin, and I feel like, yes, I agree to a certain extent, but what
Mhm.
if this has health benefits for this individual? Like they need to have some type of medical stuff. Are you going to condemn them because they have a question about a certain, and this is what I mean. It goes further into the main issue, which is compassion and love and kindness,
yeah.
and that's my whole thing is that the older generation needs to start looking at individuals like James, like, oh, he
Mhm.
genuinely has an eager question. Let me
Mhm.
answer it in the most kindest way possible that I can, instead of being like,
Amen.
yeah, you came to confession, not do five Hail Marys. Like, no, like, no, I don't think that's the answer. That's the
Mhm.
issue. Like, I don't think that's the answer. And,
Mhm.
I think that we really should be listening to these younger individuals. Like me, I plan on becoming a Coptic priest. And if an
Mhm.
individual is telling me they're struggling with substance, my answer is not go say the Jesus prayer. I mean, that could be
Mhm.
one of the answers, but my main answer is what is the deeper subject behind why you cope this way?
Mm,
Uh,
yeah.
and I think that's how we should be approaching these young believers because they're really struggling out here, man. They're really struggling with stuff. And I think that, it's good to pick up your cross every day, but Jesus also tells us to rest in Him.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think
I
that we're approaching it incorrectly, you know.
I actually think the discussion around substance abuse and things like that can be a pretty good shift into something that I didn't think I was going to be asking, but here I am.
Mhm.
Uh, so on my account, I've been really big about understanding psychology and
Mhm.
integrating psychology and its concerns into the Christian sphere. I've been really big about that. I have attempted to or make videos correcting people who think that like dementia is demonic,
Yeah.
or um,
Mhm.
there was one guy in particular that I remember who thought that the Book of Enoch was real, but that the spirits of the giants that died in the flood are demons, and that those demons today are lust, anger, and anxiety.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
so I was sitting there like, this is just so bad. Um, and there's other things out there.
Mhm.
But um, so with
so
that said, I'm curious if your theology or apologetics has in any way affected you personally or other people in terms of how they say deal with any mental health struggles, and certainly substance abuse can be part of a mental health struggle. I mean the toll that it takes on there can be heavy. So um, yeah, if there have been any struggles that you guys have had in that
oh,
area, how,
definitely me. I can
how's
definitely
that?
speak on that because
Yeah, go ahead.
when I was getting doxxed by these Torah observant people, these Hebrew rooters, like I mean, like they were like trying to send people my address and like
Ooh.
all crazy stuff. I'm not
Scary.
going to get into the details of it, but
Mhm.
I can tell you the outcome that happened to me. It stressed me out to the point where, like, I started to become really overweight. Like, I was originally 260 pounds. Now I'm like 180.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and and it got to the point where my doctor wanted to prescribe me medical marijuana because my body was just in so much pain and I had so much anxiety. Like he says, I can't put you on these other medications. It's going to make you worse. So
Mhm.
what ended up happening was I was on medical marijuana for a while, and I literally struggled with the substance of marijuana because it was the only thing that calmed me down. So
Mhm.
I struggled with that for a while. I still have my medical marijuana card. I just don't smoke. I just use pills and like edibles and stuff. So
Mhm.
what eventually happened was that it became like a substance abuse of smoking, and like I had to really cut it off out of my life because it was causing problems with my family, uh, stuff like
Mhm.
that. So I definitely struggled with substance a lot uh,
Mhm.
when I was first doing apologetics because I was being attacked so much, like I couldn't handle it.
Mhm.
Um, So I feel like I've definitely struggled with substance, and like that's my whole. I actually have a podcast in the future coming up about the substance of marijuana and stuff like that to show people it's like as believers in Jesus Christ, it's okay for us to struggle with things, but as long as you acknowledge that struggle and you're like constantly trying to improve it. I think the issue lies is when we recognize the struggle and we say, "Nah, I'm gonna justify it."
Mhm.
So, that's personally my personal experience with substance and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So how would you say that your uh, theology affected that struggle,
My theology
if it did?
essentially made me because like everything was about Judaism and stuff like that. I was like, these things are great. Like me learning these books, they're great, but I feel no spiritual awareness of like God in that sense. Like I don't feel like the connection that
Mhm.
I do with God. So it kind of like that substance thing I was going through made me want to ask, what is the meaning of life? Is this all that this means for me? Like I just study all day and like look at the front, the scripture, and that's it. That's just my whole walk for the rest of my rest of my life.
Mhm.
So eventually, I started to get into orthodoxy because I was so attracted to it. Even when I was Messianic, I was attracted to the idea of having icons, uh, venerating it. Like I just did. And when I started to become a catechumen of the Coptic Church, that's when I started to experience a shift of my theology because of the substance.
Mm,
Mhm.
gotcha. Okay. So what about you, James? Has your apologetics or theology ever affected the mental health of you or maybe even someone you've talked to?
Mhm. Honestly, I don't know if I could really point at any examples in my mind here. I may have talked to a lot of people that have bad mental health, of course, and I've tried to help them in a Christian manner. Has that always helped? It's kind of had mixed results. Um, but I can't really speak too well on that, unfortunately. hmm I mean, I can say that I feel like it's definitely like the people that have had mental health that I've tried to help with definitely made me more caring. I would say because it makes me have that more perspective and I can really understand what they're struggling with a little bit more.
Mm,
Um, yeah.
gotcha. What about you, Stephen? If you can still hear us, we can hear you.
Oh,
Uh,
alrighty.
I do not know what happened. It's not saying he's mute on my end,
Hmm.
so
Yeah, me either. It doesn't say he's me.
Yeah,
uh,
maybe he went to the restroom or something.
this is very possible. Um, well, yeah, I can go ahead and add a little bit to that then.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I've had my own various struggles. I would say one thing was just allowing for the belief, like my theology and apologetics allows for the belief in psychology as a legitimate like field of scientific inquiry. I would say God, he made our minds, right? He is
Mhm.
responsible for our brains. Or well, I should say our brains particularly,
Yeah,
because you could get into how the mind is like a philosophically different thing. Anyway, so but yeah, so just that alone, right? Uh, helped. a lot because it made me a
Mhm.
lot more comfortable with um, counseling from Christians and non Christians, right? Getting going to counseling for that, I was like, well, there's wisdom to be found even among the non-believers, right?
Mhm.
And both Augustine and John Calvin talk about this as well. Like there's truth to be found elsewhere, and so just acknowledging that, believing that, that really opened me up to um, allow
Mhm.
myself to talk to people and talk through things. I think another issue too was just not spiritualizing everything. Like not not everything needs a spiritual cause. Demons don't have to
Mhm.
be giving people OCD 24/7. Uh, they don't have to be giving people anxiety. Sometimes you're anxious just because of your context. Like if you grew up in a context where it was kill or be killed, that might
Mhm.
make you really anxious.
Yeah.
um, you don't need demons to do
Uh-huh.
that, right?
Yeah.
um, if you we understand that narcissists are made in their childhood; they're not born, right? Because really, it comes down to how the parents parent the child, among some other things, of
Uh-huh.
course, but that being a big one, right? Narcissism doesn't have to be demonic; it's the result of failed parenting. Um, so it moves. I think too. It helps to move that goalpost between from um, demons are the cause of all these things, but we can do something about it. To we humans are oftentimes the cause of our own sufferings and failures, or other humans will be the
Mhm.
cause of our own misfortunes. Uh, so yeah, I think acknowledging those two realities from a theological and even apologetic perspective. I mean, it does that does have apologetic value because non-believers will sometimes critique believers for spiritualizing everything or you know uh, these sorts of things. But it's like, well, if you can acknowledge that things have natural causes, that things have a natural course of going, um, perhaps God has put those natural courses in motion. But if things have a natural course, then they don't need uh, supernatural attribution, you might say. And so I think that helps uh, as well. Obviously, that's not to say that the spiritual world doesn't have an impact.
Mhm.
Obviously, of course, it does. I'm going to argue as evolutionary creationist, it certainly does. But um, yeah, so yeah, acknowledging those two things was really helpful for my mental health. And I know people have suffered really bad
Mhm.
not acknowledging those two things. Like I had a friend who was a part of a hyper charismatic cult, and I'm perfectly fine saying cult because like they literally
Mhm.
like wanted to separate her from me because
Oh,
I never
goodness.
believed in spirits, of course. Uh, Wanted to separate her from her parents and say, you're old enough, right? You could live with us if you wanted to, because we're more spiritual and we're going to help your spiritual life in ways that you
Mhm.
not really Christian parents can't do. Um, and she had um, um, generalized anxiety disorder because of the environment and context she grew up in. So, uh, so instead of like recommending therapy or counseling and trying to get help and things like that, their answer was exorcisms.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so they tried
Mhm.
to exorcise the demon of anxiety.
Yeah.
Um, and it only made it worse. They told her, "Well, if you have enough faith, you should be able to declare
Ah.
by faith that your anxiety will disappear." And of course, she felt more like a failure, more like God didn't love her,
Mhm.
and so on by doing that, and then finding out, no, I still have anxiety.
Mhm.
Uh,
I'll be
so
right back.
yeah, um, so yeah, so I guess just recognizing those two ideas was very healthy, and especially because I got to see, like very personally, what the alternative to recognizing those two ideas was. So I know. Serrana, has there been any other, say, mental health issues that you've had, and then how you've been able to um, how theology and apologetics might have helped you in that or
Yeah,
affected
so
you?
in the beginning too, I had mental health issues. Like my marijuana addiction was way worse before I got saved than when I got
Mm,
saved. So when I was doing marijuana, I mean like every day. Like I was doing it every day. It eventually led me to ask big questions, and not only ask big questions, but it also led me to uh, trying to understand the God that my parents worship more.
Mm.
And that's what ended up happening is how I got into apologetics was because I was a stoner who who was interested in theology, and now I have like 150 books just about theology.
Yeah.
So it also, I gotta say, apologetics taught me how to speak to people without getting offended so much.
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that helps.
So
We can definitely comment on that in a minute. But my brother is in the chat. Hey, how you doing? Actually, seriously though, thank you for joining the stream.
Mhm.
Me and my brother have been able to have some really good conversations about uh, faith and or lack thereof and stuff like that. So I appreciate it when he's able to
Yeah.
join and support in a small way.
yeah,
Hmm.
But to your point though, um, I would that I one I think that's actually really cool. Um, but I forgot. I can't believe I forgot in that instant. Uh, the particular um, the particular thing you were trying to um, that I was gonna say, bouncing off of what you just said. Um, but I guess in general, I think virtue ethics could be really
Mhm.
helpful here if you guys know what that is. Essentially, ethical theory that says the goal of life or what someone should strive for is to develop excellent character, excellent moral character. So, but within virtue ethics, one of the really core tenets that every virtue ethics agrees upon is wisdom. A
Mhm.
person needs wisdom, moral skill to be able to know what the right course of action is in a particular context. So, virtue ethics welcomes sort of um, relativistic, not like a wholesale relativistic morality, but some level of relativism, recognizing that people's contexts, situations, circumstances
Mhm.
are all different and they might require different solutions. And so, with regards to the weed thing, um, I would say wisdom, I think, would have us say it might it might actually be the non-virtuous, the viceful action to take to not smoke it in a certain context if it is going to help life, right, and help it to flourish morally, possibly spiritually, right, physically. But wisdom should also say, like, look, if this is something that you're going to be addicted to, well, I don't think Paul, especially the Apostle Paul, but anyone would want us to be addicted, right? One of the fruits of the spirit is
Mhm.
self control,
yeah, self
right? You
control.
know, all things. Paul kind of has that dialogue where he says, all things are permissible, but like not all things are good for me, right?
Mhm.
All things are
Yeah,
permissible, but I will not be enslaved to anything.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think using wisdom and moral skill, we could
yeah,
say,
because I feel like the substance by itself is not the issue at hand. I believe it's how people approach it.
mm,
Like if like you're like smoking like I don't know 10 times a day, I think you have an issue, bro. I think you need to go to therapy and like
Mhm.
stuff like that. But like if you're just like smoking on a weekend and like relaxing and stuff like that, I don't think there's an issue behind that. But I think the biggest issue is how we handle uh, uh, what I would call a moderation. Um, it's like alcohol. Like alcohol, yes, it can get you extremely drunk, but Should we be getting drunk every night? No.
Mhm.
It's all about moderation, I feel like. So
Mhm.
I feel like when it comes to moderation and self control, that's a good reflection of your mental health and
Mm.
stuff like that.
And could also be a reflection of your character as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
If you're able to control yourself, yeah, that's no, that's good. Um, so, yeah, I don't know what happened with Stefan
Yeah, me,
or
me either.
Steven. I keep saying it, Steven. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Um, yeah, I don't know what happened with him. He's still here, I guess, technically.
Mm.
Um, but uh, we are 30 minutes out from my time limit. I don't
No.
have any particular questions.
Uh-huh.
So I guess. Um, oh, okay. He's back.
Sorry,
Oh,
my
cool.
dogs escaped.
Oh,
Oh,
My dogs escaped my yard.
gotcha.
oh, we love dogs. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm actually allergic to like dog and cat fur.
Oh,
Um,
darn.
yeah, which is unfortunate and really inconvenient because I like animals.
Yeah.
So grew up with cats. But yeah, so since you were out for a while, Stephen, I we kind of talked about how our theology and apologetics might have influenced our mental health or someone else's mental health that we know. So I would ask you the same question if there's been a that kind of struggle, and then how your theology and apologetics have helped that or have affected that in any way, I should say.
So Mm, my office is at my mom's a psychiatric nurse practitioner. My office, co-office with her, so I see a lot of that. I don't actually deal with a lot of that. There was a woman that came in and was visitor, and she said she was a Christian, but she said she was possessed by demons. And obviously, we probably
Mm,
all know that if you're a Christian, you can't be possessed by demons. And so it was kind of a she like had an exorcist by Catholic priest and all this other stuff. It was pretty interesting to learn about. So, but me personally, I haven't had any dealings with people with mental illness that crossed over
Mhm.
into the spiritual.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was just saying that we gotta be careful. The two ideas that at least helped me in my struggles was understanding that not everything needs to have a spiritual cause, right? My anxiety doesn't need to be demonic. And I jokingly gave the example like, if you grew up in a context, even as a child, where it was either you're gonna die or you need to kill the person that was gonna kill you, that might give you anxiety. And so that doesn't have to have a supernatural cause. And then the
Exactly.
idea of that psychology is a legitimate field of science because it is one of those things that studies the natural world, particularly the brain and our behavior, and that is a part of the revelation of God. So I hold a
Mhm.
natural theology, so I'm going to say that nature is revelatory of the creator. And so as many Christian scientists um, across the board have held over the centuries, to study science can be an act of worship, a can be a very uh, good thing for your spiritual life. Get to learn about God and His creation, and I would say even how He created. So yeah, recognizing those two things really helped me just be open to psychology and stuff like that. Because I remember, at least when I was a kid, I wasn't. And then, as I got older, learned more, came to these conclusions. I was like, you know what? Yeah, I think it's about high time I do this in my life. Uh, so, yeah, that's been very helpful. So we're about 30 minutes out from the time limit that I set. I got to do something
Mhm.
a little bit later and got to get ready for that. Um, but uh, to those watching, I thank you so much for watching this. I hope you've been able to see some of the diverseness of the group, as well as the fact that we are united in Christ to defend the faith and to encourage
Uh-huh.
people to inquire and become a part of the faith. So, with that said, uh, would you guys be interested in doing any more projects or
Mhm.
have any more ideas about what we could do together as a group?
Yeah.
Mhm. I don't have any specific ideas, but it'd be cool to do that something, I'm sure. Um, we all seem to be pretty into, well, especially, I'm sorry, I can never know how to pronounce your name. The Oriental.
My name is
Oh,
Christian. You could just call me Christian. That's my English name.
Oh,
My Hebrew name is Notsuri, but just call me
gotcha.
Christian.
Okay, Christian. So he is very, he's into Jewish apologetics. So maybe we could do something like Tobias Singer or something, maybe, or I'm not sure.
I
Whatever
think
you guys
that
are.
could be. I think that could be really good. James has done a lot on Tovia Singer.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah, I know his group very well. There's this guy named Jason. His name is pretty sure his Hebrew name is Yaakov. He is a
Uh-huh.
direct uh, disciple of Tovia Singer,
Oh wow.
and me and him have gotten me him Rabbi Eduardo, who is Radar
Mhm.
Apologetics, have gotten into several debates with this guy. And
Mhm.
once again, like I think a lot that group of Jewish people, we call them anti-missionaries because they don't
Uh-huh.
want you to preach the gospel to Jews. That's their whole shtick, is that they don't want
Yeah.
you to preach the gospel to Jews because Jesus has nothing to do with
Mhm.
Judaism. And what's the good thing about me is my whole ministry is about proving the Jewish life of Jesus, the Jewish life of
Mhm.
Paul, the apostles, all of that. So I feel like that would be a good video. I think another
Mhm.
good video that we could do is the Christian life and the Torah, because we have a lot of people who think that there's no type of Torah within the Christian life, but there is. Jesus quoted from the Torah. He uh, quoted the Shema. He quoted, love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's like the whole pinnacle of Judaism is that commandment. Like, go look up Bet Hillel. He says that the most important commandments is love your neighbor and love God. The rest is commentary. So,
Mhm.
Mm,
we have to understand that Christianity comes from Judaism. I mean, I really recommend the book. It's called The Religion of the Apostles by
Mhm.
uh, Father uh, Father Stephen D. Young. He is a Eastern Orthodox priest,
yeah, yeah,
and he's
yep.
very pro
Okay.
Torah, like very pro Torah observant, very pro that type of narrative. But I really suggest people to get that book because that book has changed my life on how I look at
Mhm.
Christianity compared to Judaism. The Judaism that you see today, practice wise, not ethnic wise, the same Jews you see today are the same Jews of the first century, but their practice is 6th century at best.
Mm,
Like
Mhm.
everything is a reaction to Christianity. Like from their Pesach plates that they have, from their unleavened bread that they have, from how they operate prayers. It's very uh, a reaction to Christianity. It's not like this is their thing that they came up with in the first century.
gotcha, gotcha.
So,
Could
I
you
think another
clarify on
project.
the
Oh, go ahead.
unleavened bread? I'm sorry.
wait, what?
I was a little bit. So you said that unleavened bread is a reaction to Christian. Could you clarify what you mean
Oh,
by that?
yeah. So okay. So like for example, Jews, right? They could not tell you uh, how to make unleavened bread. They could not tell you without the Talmud. And if you read the Talmud and it's like literary history, it only comes from third century to sixth century. It doesn't come from the first century. So they couldn't really tell you what the unleavened bread looked like in
Uh-huh.
the first century. But Christianity can tell you what it looks like in the first century because they have been eating unleavened bread for almost 2,000 years.
Oh, okay.
So, so their Pesach meal, which is Passover, they
Mm.
use the same material that the Roman Catholics use for their
Mhm.
unleavened bread. So, quite literally, if they didn't see what the Roman Catholics were doing as Jews, they would not have their unleavened bread or their Seder meal. I mean, like, look at it this way too. The Roman Catholics, right? They have this cup that's called the cup of Elijah. In the
Hmm.
fifth century, Jews started copying that from the Roman Catholics. They started having this cup of Elijah thing. Nowhere in the first century was there a cup of Elijah that they had to wait for. No, it was purely the church. So when I'm saying that Judaism is a reaction to Christianity, I'm saying that because of their practice, not
Hmm.
because of their ethnicity. So
Hmm.
when the stuff that they practice, like another example, right? Another example of the things that they practice now, and they've started to realize now, is that the whole idea of a multi hypostasis God, right? They believe in that. They'll tell you we believe in that. We believe
Hmm.
that there are angels. There is an angel that's considered to be Hashem, but we don't say he's Hashem. That's the whole point I'm trying to get at. Everything is a reaction to Christianity. Another example I would like to give is if it wasn't a holiday that is a reaction to Christianity,
Hmm.
is like I said, Passover. Passover is one of the biggest ones, and its reaction is to the meal of Jesus Christ, which is they have a plate, they have the unleavened bread, they break the unleavened bread, they dump the bread in wine sometimes. They say that they leave this cup of Elijah out so that the Messiah can come. Even their prayers, bro. Like for example, Jews pray this prayer every day where they ask God to remove their evil inclination that they were born with. Almost like how the Orthodox Church views original sin or what's it called? I forgot how
Ancestral sin?
ancestral sin. Yeah. So they believe in that, and that's all because of a reaction of Christianity. Another example is all the statements of Jesus Christ in the Talmud came from the third century. Who wrote, as a church father, who wrote the biggest apologetic against rabbinical Judaism? It was Saint John Chrysostom.
Hmm.
So they made a reactionary thing where they're saying, no, Jesus Christ, he is the son of Pantera, which means in Greek means the son of who does not have a father. And they also say things like, oh, the followers of Jesus are like sorcerers and all of that. And it's all because of what
Hmm.
St. John Chrysostom is doing. So there's a reaction, a back and forth reaction of Judaism and Christianity for over 2,000 years. So it's really interesting. I've
Hmm.
studied upon it myself, and I think that the whole Talmud thing, the Mishnah, the Gemara, it's all a reaction to Christianity. It's not, and that's why I say Orthodox Christianity is the true Judaism because it actually has a claim of Second Temple works. Talmud does not. Nowhere in the Talmud it tells you how to uh, set up a temple or anything like that. It just tells you to how to perform certain mitzvot because we don't have a temple.
Hmm.
Gotcha.
So if
No,
you
that
guys
could
ever want to do a video on that, I we could do a video on that.
no, that
I
could
think
definitely
I,
be some
oh,
interesting content. Yeah, go ahead,
I think
Steve.
it'd be obviously from what I do. I think it'd be interesting to do a perspective on money because it touches every Christian's life. There's prosperity gospel, there's poverty gospel. I've realized there's a lot of this like from like the secret and law of attraction. There's a lot of manifestation, which is essentially witchcraft
Mhm.
entering the church and stuff like that. I think that'd be interesting to do research on and kind of explore.
Yeah,
Possibly.
yeah, I think that could be interesting too. Um, on my end, I'm thinking of something that we could, uh, that a lot of us at least could participate in.
Yeah.
So, discussions, I think, maybe responding to, say, atheists online,
Oh yeah, definitely.
like an atheist video or something like that together could be really helpful because I know a lot
Hmm.
of us because there is the four of us here, but just to be clear, there are 23 people in the group. Some of us content creators, some of us not. But 23 people who are interested in diving into apologetics and theology and stuff. Um, but we have like Dr. Sweater in there, who is a physicist and a Christian who makes content. Uh,
Hmm.
David, I believe he's a very well researched apologist, who's commonly talking with unbelievers and things like that, and has actually done videos with other people, like other YouTube channels like Testify, I believe. Um,
Yeah.
David has a pretty big YouTube channel as well, and some other stuff. So yeah, we could definitely pull our resources and get something together. Um,
Uh-huh.
So yeah, basically, this is not the only live stream we're going to be doing together. There might be a different group of us, but I definitely plan on doing more with this group in the future.
Yeah, we could do a
Excuse me.
poll as well. We could poll some topics that people
Oh,
would be interested in, so we can get more, not interest, but more participation.
Yeah,
hmm.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Uh, but yeah, that is it for me and all the questions that I have for you guys. Before we sign off, is there anything else you guys would like to say last?
Hmm.
Well,
I think we pretty much covered all the bases.
yeah,
Yeah.
we pretty
Got you.
much discussed everything.
I
Yeah.
got you.
I
I got
feel
you.
like.
I got you. Okay. Well, to anyone who's joined us, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm really glad that I was able to start this group, and I hope me and James. So another thing we didn't talk about, me and
Uh-huh.
James started this. This is kind of a cooperation between two of
Uh-huh.
us. We came up together with the rules that we have for the group, as well as
Yeah.
the beliefs and stuff like that. One of those being the ecumenicism that we express in the group. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I'm definitely excited and hopeful for the future. And I definitely hope that me and James could host some stuff together with the group, or even separately. James also has a YouTube channel, if that's right, that you operate as well, so you could host some things too with people. Um, that said, again, thank you so much for watching and joining us for this. We will definitely have more content in the future. Links to everyone here and their stuff will be down in the description. So you guys can check those things out. And again, check out my link tree. I'm gonna have a lot going on in June, so it's gonna be fun and interesting.
Hmm.
Um, with that said, also thank you to you guys for joining me for this. I know not everyone in the group can make it and stuff like that, and then obviously, not everyone wants to, because they're not all creators or something like that, or want to show their face, and
Yeah.
that's totally fine. I didn't. I don't think it's necessary to like participate in that front necessarily to be a part of the group. So, but yeah, thank you guys so much. Y'all are awesome. um,
Awesome.
and I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. To anyone who wants to join the group, you can comment in the YouTube comment section, or DM me on Facebook, and I can have a conversation with you, and we could see if you could be a good fit for Discern Nerds. Which also, as a side tangent, I don't fully remember how that name came about. Actually,
Concerned nerds.
Oh, I
I
thought of it.
I did you?
Yeah, I did. I
Okay,
thought it
okay.
sounded cool, so
I knew I wanted to do something with the word nerd, and I just couldn't figure it out. And then
yeah.
yeah, I think you pitched the
Hmm.
name. Um,
I mean, that's
but
what
it
we are. We're all like Bible nerds and like
Yeah.
anime nerds.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Hmm.
And I appreciate it. But
Hmm.
yeah,
yeah,
thank you to everyone watching. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this, and I hope to be able to do more with you guys and
Hmm.
others in the group in the future. So.